It was an ordinary Tuesday night, or at least that's what I thought. The air in the house was thick with the smell of the lasagna Emily had made earlier, though the meal itself sat barely touched on my plate. She had gone upstairs after saying she was exhausted from work, something she had been claiming a lot more often lately, but I had stopped questioning it. I wasn't the nagging husband. I wasn't the type to pry when she needed space. So I sat in the dimly lit dining room, the only sound being the slow hum of the fridge and the occasional clink of my fork against the ceramic plate. I had spent the last few weeks telling myself that I was imagining things, that I was just paranoid. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was the long hours at the fire station. Maybe I was reading too much into the way Emily had started pulling away from me in the past few months. But the doubt never really went away, and neither did the nagging feeling that something was off. And then, it happened. It started as a sound, faint at first. I wouldn't have even noticed it if the house wasn't dead silent. A low, muffled noise drifting down from upstairs. I set my fork down, tilting my head slightly as I listened. It almost sounded like music, but that didn't make sense. Emily always complained about needing complete silence to fall asleep. I waited a few seconds, telling myself it was nothing, but then I heard it again. A voice. A man's voice. My entire body tensed. I pushed my chair back slowly, the wooden legs scraping against the floor as I stood up. My heart was already beating harder than it should have been for something that was probably nothing, but my gut told me otherwise. I moved through the house as quietly as possible, my bare feet making almost no sound against the hardwood floor. When I reached the bottom of the staircase, I paused again, straining to hear. There it was. Low, smooth, undeniably male. And close. I climbed the stairs carefully, avoiding the creaky spots I knew too well, the ones that would give me away. My hands clenched into fists as I reached the top, and that's when I realized the sound was coming from the walk-in closet inside our bedroom. Emily was talking to someone. My stomach turned. The closet? Why was she in there with the doors shut, talking in hushed tones? I wasn't stupid. I wasn't the type to ignore the obvious. My mind had already started jumping to conclusions, but I needed to see it for myself. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and walked straight into the bedroom. Emily was sitting on the floor inside the closet, her back against the built-in drawers, her phone resting in her lap with her earbuds plugged in. She was whispering, the way you do when you don't want someone to hear you. When she saw me, she froze. Her entire body went stiff, and for a brief second, she looked like a child caught doing something she knew she shouldn't be doing. I stared at her, at the way her fingers clutched the fabric of her pajama pants, at the way she scrambled to pull the earbuds out as if that would somehow erase the fact that I had just caught her in the middle of a private conversation. She swallowed hard. "Adam," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you scared me. What are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. My eyes flicked to her phone, but she was already locking the screen, slipping it under her leg like I wouldn't notice. I took a step closer, my voice low and steady. "Who were you talking to?" Emily hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. "No one," she said, shaking her head a little too quickly. "I was just listening to a podcast before bed." I stared at her, trying to read her face, trying to make sense of the fact that my wife, the woman I had spent the last 11 years with, was sitting on the floor of our closet whispering into her phone like some teenager sneaking a forbidden call past curfew. My pulse was pounding in my ears, but I kept my voice calm. "You were talking," I said slowly, enunciating every word. "I heard you. I heard him." Emily's breath hitched. It was subtle, but I caught it. She shook her head again, too hard this time. "Babe, you're being weird. I wasn't talking to anyone. Maybe you heard something from outside." I felt something inside me snap. I wasn't an idiot. I reached down, my hand shooting toward her leg, and before she could stop me, I yanked her phone out from under her thigh. "Adam, what are you doing?" she shrieked, scrambling to grab it back. But I was faster. I stepped back, turning the screen on, already swiping to the recent calls. My entire body went cold. A FaceTime call. 46 minutes long. The number wasn't saved. No name. Just a long string of digits that meant nothing to me. I looked at her. She had gone pale. I flipped the phone around, holding it up so she could see exactly what I was looking at. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the rage boiling just beneath the surface. Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands clenched into fists, her knuckles turning white. I could see what happening in her mind, the desperate attempt to come up with something, anything, that would make this seem like anything other than what it was. But there was nothing she could say. "Who is this?" I repeated, my voice sharper this time. She took a deep breath, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal looking for an escape. It's a friend from work, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. A friend from work? I repeated, staring at her. She nodded. Yes. A coworker. I told you about him before. Dr. Pierce. There it was. His name. The one I had pushed to the back of my mind. The one I had told myself was just another colleague. Just another harmless mention in her stories about work. I laughed. I actually fucking laughed, because the sheer absurdity of it all was too much to process in the moment. A friend from work? I said again, shaking my head. A friend from work that you're FaceTiming in the closet? That you're whispering to? That you're lying to me about? Emily didn't say anything. She just stood there, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to physically hold herself together. The weight of it all hit me like a freight train. She was cheating on me. Maybe not physically. Maybe not yet. But emotionally? Mentally? She had already gone there. And the worst part? She wasn't even denying it. I clenched my jaw, breathing in deeply through my nose, forcing myself to stay composed even though every fiber of my being wanted to throw her phone against the wall and scream until my throat was raw. Instead, I took one last look at her, at the woman I had loved for over a decade, the woman who had sworn she would never hurt me. Then, I turned around and walked out of the room. Emily didn't stop me. She didn't say a word. Because we both knew this was just the beginning of something far worse. I sat in the living room, gripping Emily's phone so hard my knuckles ached, staring at the screen like it might change what I already knew. 46 minutes. That was a long time for a conversation she had no reason to hide. I could still hear her in the bedroom, probably pacing, probably trying to come up with an excuse. I scrolled through her call history, checking if this was a one-time thing, hoping, idiotically, that maybe I was wrong. But there it was, multiple calls, some lasting over an hour, some just a few minutes, all spaced out over the past several weeks. The timestamps didn't lie, and neither did the frequency. This wasn't casual. It wasn't work-related. It was deliberate. Emily appeared in the doorway, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her expression shifting between anger and something that almost looked like guilt. Adam, can you give me my phone back? She said, her voice strained, like she was forcing herself to stay calm. I didn't move, didn't answer. I just looked at her, waiting, giving her the opportunity to explain before I forced it out of her. She let out a frustrated sigh, stepping closer, but there was hesitation in her movements, like she wasn't sure how much of a reaction I was about to give. This is ridiculous, she continued, her tone sharpening. You're acting like I did something wrong. I held up the phone, my thumb hovering over the most recent call. Tell me why you've been FaceTiming him in the closet, I said evenly, watching her closely. Tell me why I had to find out this way instead of you just being honest with me. She shifted uncomfortably, glancing away for a split second, and I caught it, the small flicker of panic before she masked it with forced confidence. I already told you, he's a friend from work, she said, rolling her eyes like I was being unreasonable. Sometimes we talk. That's all it is. That's all it is? I repeated, letting out a short, humorless laugh. Because it doesn't look like that's all it is. It looks like you've been sneaking around, whispering in closets, and lying to my face. She exhaled sharply, stepping forward again, reaching for her phone, but I pulled it back just enough to keep it out of her reach. Her frustration boiled over instantly. Jesus, Adam, stop being dramatic. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I stared at her, waiting, letting the silence stretch between us, letting her feel the weight of the moment. Then unlock it, I said, my voice low, steady. If it's nothing, unlock it and show me the messages. Her face hardened instantly. A reaction she couldn't take back. A moment she hadn't planned for. She scoffed, shaking her head, but I could see the tension creeping up her neck. You don't trust me, she said, like she was trying to turn this into something it wasn't. That's the problem here. Not whatever you think is going on. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around the phone. That's not an answer, Emily. She laughed bitterly, shaking her head again, muttering something under her breath before turning away from me like she was done with the conversation. But she wasn't leaving the room. She was stalling. She was thinking. She was figuring out her next move. Unlock it, I repeated, stepping closer this time. Show me that I have nothing to worry about. She didn't. Instead, she turned back around, her expression colder now, her stance firmer. I'm not going to do that, she said simply, her voice clipped, final. Because this isn't about my phone, Adam. It's about the fact that you don't respect my privacy. And I'm not going to set a precedent where you get to go through my personal conversations just because you feel insecure. I let out a breath through my nose, staring at her, feeling something inside me snap into place. Got it, I said, nodding slowly. Then we're done here. She blinked, caught off guard. What? You don't want to show me? I said, stepping back, setting her phone down on the table between us. Fine. I don't need to see it anymore. I already have my answer. Emily's lips parted slightly like she wanted to argue, like she wanted to convince me I was overreacting, but for the first time, I saw it, the way her shoulders tensed, the way she looked away just long enough to confirm everything I needed to know. She had something to hide. I turned and started walking toward the front door. Where are you going? She called after me, her voice sharp with irritation. I grabbed my keys, shoving them into my pocket. Out. Adam, don't do this, she said, her footsteps quick behind me, but I didn't stop. I stepped out onto the porch, inhaling the cool night air, feeling the weight of the house behind me, the weight of what just happened, the weight of what was coming next. She stopped in the doorway, watching me. This is so fucking stupid, she muttered, shaking her head. You're acting like a child. I turned to face her, my hands resting on my hips, my jaw tight. I'm not the one sneaking around, Emily. She flinched, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, staring at each other, both realizing at the same time that this was the moment everything changed. I wasn't going to let this slide. And she wasn't going to tell me the truth. Which meant, one way or another, I was going to find it myself. I didn't sleep that night, not because I didn't try, but because every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she hesitated, the way she refused to unlock her phone, the way she tried to flip it back on me like I was the problem. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through every interaction over the past few months, every late shift, every unexplained night where she came home smelling like a different soap than the one in our house. I thought about the way she laughed at something on her phone but never showed me, the way she put it face down every time I walked into the room, the way she used to reach for me in bed but hadn't in weeks. None of it was paranoia anymore. It was real, and now that I had confronted her, now that the truth was right there in front of me, I knew I couldn't ignore it. By morning, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to ask her again. I wasn't going to beg her to admit something she had no intention of admitting. If she wanted to lie to my face, fine. But I was going to find out the truth myself. She left for work before I did, barely saying a word as she grabbed her things and walked out the door like nothing had happened. Maybe she thought I would let it go. Maybe she thought I would convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe she thought I was still the same man who trusted her blindly. She was wrong. The first thing I did was check our shared laptop. It was something we both used, mostly for bills and random browsing, and I knew Emily wasn't particularly tech-savvy. If she had logged into anything, there was a chance it would still be stored somewhere. I opened the browser, checked her search history, but she had already deleted it. That didn't surprise me. What had surprised me was when I pulled up the saved password section and saw an unfamiliar email account. It wasn't her usual work email. It wasn't the personal one I had seen her use for years. This one was different, a variation of her name with numbers at the end, and the moment I saw it, my stomach twisted. I copied the email and tried logging into it, guessing a few of her common passwords, but none of them worked. I wasn't stupid enough to reset it and trigger a notification, so instead, I went back to the browser and checked if she had ever used it to log into anything. That's when I found it. A hotel booking. I clicked on the link, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The reservation had already passed, a single night stay at a hotel downtown, made under the email I had just found. It wasn't her work travel. It wasn't some random thing she had mentioned to me. It was deliberate, secretive, and the worst part? The reservation had been for last weekend. She had told me she was picking up an extra shift. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands gripping the edge of the desk so tightly I thought it might crack under the pressure. I felt like an idiot, like a blind fool who had let this happen right under his nose. But I wasn't blind anymore, and now that I had something concrete, something undeniable, there was no turning back. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think logically. Confronting her now wouldn't give me the full truth. She would lie, make excuses, maybe even turn it around on me again like she did last night. No, I needed more than this. I needed to see it for myself. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the number of a guy I knew from work. Jason, one of the newer firefighters at the station, had a brother who worked security at a few places around the city. If there was footage, if there was anything to prove beyond a doubt that Emily had been there, he could get it. I sent him a text. Need a favor. Think you can ask your brother if he can pull security footage from the Warwick Hotel? Date should be last Saturday. Jason responded almost immediately. Man, you good? Not really. Just need to know. Give me a sec. I'll call him. I paced the living room, my mind racing, waiting for the reply. It came 10 minutes later. Got something. Not gonna lie, you're not gonna like it. When do you want to see it? My stomach dropped. Send it now. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed, and a video file popped up on my screen. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. It was grainy, taken from a high-up angle, but I recognized her instantly. Emily, standing in the hotel lobby, dressed nicer than I had seen her in months. She was smiling, her phone in her hand, typing something before looking up at him. Dr. Pierce. The man I had only known through the way his name slipped too easily from her lips in conversation, the man who had been FaceTiming my wife late at night. The man she had been sneaking off to see in hotels while I sat at home believing every word that came out of her mouth. He walked up to her, placed a hand on the small of her back, and leaned in, saying something that made her laugh. Then, without hesitation, without a second thought, she took his hand and led him toward the elevator. The video ended. I stood there, staring at the screen, my body so tense I thought I might explode. There was no more doubt. No more second-guessing. No more convincing myself I was imagining things. She had cheated. Not just emotionally. Not just flirtation. Not just secret conversations in the dark. She had physically taken herself to another man. Slept in a hotel room with him. Lied to me. Looked me in the eye. And continued living in our home like nothing had happened. I felt something in my chest tighten. Something deep and unfamiliar. Something that felt a lot like rage. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to tell her I knew. Not yet. Because if she thought she could walk through that door tonight and pretend like I was still the fool she had made me into, she had another thing coming. Emily walked into the house like nothing had changed, setting her purse on the kitchen counter and stretching her arms as she let out a tired sigh. I had been waiting, sitting at the dining table, watching the clock, thinking about every single second she had stolen from me. The lies, the nights she came home acting like she had been exhausted from work when she had really been coming from him. She pulled out her phone, checked something, then finally looked up and saw me sitting there. Her expression barely shifted, but I caught it, that half-second flicker of hesitation before she forced a casual smile. You're home early, she said, walking over to the fridge like we hadn't stood in this very house less than 24 hours ago, fighting over the trust she had already broken. Want me to start dinner? Or did you eat already? I didn't answer. I just watched her, letting the silence stretch long enough that she finally turned, closing the fridge door, her fingers gripping the handle a little too tightly. What? She asked, tilting her head slightly, like she was annoyed, like I was the one acting strange. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Where were you last Saturday? Emily blinked, clearly not expecting that question. She straightened up, setting her phone on the counter, rolling her shoulders as if shaking off the tension that had settled into the room. I told you, I picked up an extra shift, she said, her voice measured, controlled. Why? I nodded slowly, tapping my fingers against the table, pretending to think. Right. An extra shift at the hospital, I repeated. And you didn't go anywhere else that day? Didn't take a break? Meet up with anyone? She let out a small, forced laugh. Why are you asking me this? I stood up, pushing my chair back, walking around the table until I was standing just a few feet from her. Because I know you weren't at the hospital, I said, watching her closely, waiting for her next move. I know exactly where you were. Emily's mouth opened slightly, her body stiffening. I saw the gears turning in her head, the way her mind was scrambling to figure out what I knew, how much I had seen, how much she could still lie her way out of. Adam, she started, her voice softer now, trying to shift the tone, trying to play innocent. I don't know what you think you know, but... Warwick Hotel, I interrupted, watching the color drain from her face. You checked in at 6:30, went up to her room with him 10 minutes later. Stayed the night. Left the next morning like a woman who didn't have a husband waiting for her at home. Her breathing changed. I saw it, the way her chest rose a little faster, the way her fingers twitched against the counter, the way her eyes darted toward her phone like it might somehow save her. She swallowed hard, then forced herself to hold my gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. I laughed, shaking my head. That's the best you've got? I asked. Really? After everything, you're just going to stand there and lie to my face? Emily's lips pressed together, and for a moment, I thought she was going to keep denying it. But then, her shoulders dropped slightly, and she let out a slow breath. Okay, she said, her voice quiet but steady. Okay, I was there. But it's not what you think. I clenched my jaw, barely holding back the urge to slam my fist into the table. Then explain it to me, I said, my voice tight, controlled. Tell me what I think happened and why I'm wrong. She hesitated, glancing away, pressing her fingers to her temple like she was trying to gather her thoughts. It was just, she exhaled sharply. It was a mistake. I was feeling God, I don't know. Confused. Lonely. It wasn't planned, I swear. I tilted my head slightly, watching her. You weren't planning to sleep with your coworker? I asked. But you booked a hotel room with a secret email account? Wore a dress you haven't worn in years? Lied to me about where you were. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She knew there was no explanation that could undo what she had done, but she was still trying to find one that would make it easier for her. Did you sleep with him? I asked, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her expression. She didn't answer right away. That was enough. You did, I said, nodding to myself. Jesus Christ, Emily. Her eyes started to water, and she stepped forward slightly, reaching for me, but I backed away before she could touch me. Adam, I'm sorry, she said quickly, her voice breaking slightly. I swear, I never meant for this to happen. It was stupid. It was one night, and it didn't mean anything. I wasn't thinking. You weren't thinking, I repeated, letting the words sit between us. That's the excuse? You just weren't thinking. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks now. I love you, she whispered. I never stopped loving you. Please, Adam, Stop. I cut her off, shaking my head. Don't do that. Don't fucking stand there and say you love me after you've with someone else behind my back. Emily let out a soft sob, covering her mouth with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I should have felt something seeing her like that. Maybe sympathy, maybe heartbreak, maybe anything other than the numb, cold anger that had settled into my bones. But I didn't. I just stared at her, at the woman who had ripped apart everything we had built together, and all I could think about was how easy it was for her to lie. You need to leave, I said, my voice flat. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes wide. What? You heard me, I said. Pack a bag and get out of this house. She stepped forward again, shaking her head desperately. Adam, please, we can talk about this. We can work through this. I clenched my fists. You cheated on me, I said, each word sharp, deliberate. You lied to me. You don't get to stand here and beg for another chance like this was just some mistake that can be fixed. She looked completely shattered, but I didn't care. Not anymore. You need to leave, I repeated. Now, for a second, I thought she was going to fight me on it, that she was going to stand there and plead with me until I caved. But then, after a long moment, she nodded slowly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She turned, walking out of the kitchen, heading upstairs, and I stood there, waiting, listening as she packed her things, as she moved through the house we had built together, a house she had turned into a lie. And when she finally walked out the front door, I didn't watch her go. I just stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been, feeling nothing but the weight of what she had done. Emily was gone, but the house still felt like she was in it. Her scent lingered in the bedroom, her shoes still lined up by the door, her coffee mug sitting on the counter as if she would come back any second to pick it up. I hadn't touched anything yet. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, my mind blank and full at the same time. The night stretched on, the silence pressing in around me, but I didn't turn on the TV, didn't put on music, didn't do anything except sit there, running through every moment of the past few months. I had told myself I wouldn't let it get to me, that I wouldn't sit here drowning in self-pity, but it was impossible not to feel the weight of it. I had spent 11 years believing in this marriage, trusting her, thinking we were solid, and in the end, none of it mattered. She threw it away like it was nothing, and now, I was the one left picking up the pieces. My phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. I didn't want to look at it, didn't want to deal with anyone, but when I glanced at the screen, Jason's name flashed across it. I hesitated for a second before grabbing it and answering. You good? He asked immediately, his tone careful. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. She admitted it, I said flatly. Packed a bag and left. There was a pause, and then Jason let out a slow breath. Man, I'm sorry. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. Yeah, me too. Another pause, then a shift in his voice. You want to do something? Get out of the house for a bit. I thought about it for a second. I wasn't in the mood to be around people, wasn't in the mood to pretend like I was okay, but sitting here alone, letting my thoughts eat away at me, wasn't doing me any favors either. I needed a distraction, even if it was just for a few hours. Yeah, I finally said. Yeah, let's go somewhere. 20 minutes later, Jason pulled up outside, and I climbed into his truck without a word. He didn't ask any questions, didn't try to talk about it, just drove toward the bar we usually hit after long shifts. I appreciated that. I didn't want to go over it again, didn't want to rehash every detail. I just wanted to sit somewhere that wasn't my house and not think about Emily for a while. The bar was half full, a mix of regulars and younger guys trying to get drunk on cheap beer. Jason and I grabbed a booth in the corner, ordering around without even looking at the menu. The waitress, a woman named Lisa we had known for years, gave me a sympathetic look as she set the drinks down. "Rough night?" she asked, and Jason answered before I could. "His wife's a cheating piece," he said bluntly. Lisa's eyes widened slightly, then she shook her head. "I'm sorry, Adam." I forced a small nod, picking up my beer. "Thanks." She gave me another look, like she wanted to say more, but then just patted the table and walked off. Jason took a sip of his drink, watching me carefully. "So what's next?" I let out a slow breath. "Divorce?" I said simply. "There's nothing else to say." Jason nodded, like he agreed, but then he set his glass down and leaned forward slightly. "You thinking about revenge?" I raised an eyebrow, and he smirked. "Come on, man. She betrayed you over. You're just gonna let her walk away without making her pay for it?" I hadn't let myself think about that yet. When I had confronted her, I had been too angry, too disgusted to consider anything other than getting her out of the house. But now, sitting here, the idea of just quietly filing for divorce and letting her move on like nothing happened didn't sit right with me. She deserved consequences. Jason grinned, like he could already see the shift in my expression. "You got options, you know. She's a nurse, right? Think the hospital would be cool with knowing she's screwing around with one of their doctors." The idea hit me harder than I expected. Emily and Pierce worked together. There had to be policies against that. If I played it right, I could make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person she was. Jason saw the wheels turning in my head and chuckled. "That's just one idea. We could get creative." I thought about it, about every way I could make her regret what she did, and for the first time all night, I felt something other than anger. I felt control. I picked up my drink, took a slow sip, then set it down. "Tell me more." The next morning, I woke up with my decision already made. I wasn't going to be the guy who let his cheating wife walk away without consequences. Emily had made her choices, had thrown away our marriage like it was nothing, and now she was going to deal with what that meant. I spent the better part of an hour gathering everything I needed: emails, messages, the security footage Jason had sent me, and the hotel reservation confirmation I had found. Every piece of evidence that showed exactly what she had done, every lie she had told, every step she took to betray me. I put it all in a neat folder, labeled it with her name, and got ready to destroy whatever was left of the life she had built outside of our marriage. I called her workplace first. The hospital had strict policies about workplace relationships, especially between doctors and nurses. It took a few minutes of getting transferred between departments, but eventually, I got through to HR. "Good morning," the woman on the other end said. "How can I assist you?" I kept my voice calm, professional. "I need to report an inappropriate relationship between two employees," I said. "One of them is my wife, Emily Foster." There was a pause. "And the other?" "Dr. Nathan Pierce." Another pause. I could hear typing in the background, probably pulling up their records. "And what exactly is the nature of this relationship?" I smirked to myself, knowing exactly how to frame it in a way that would do the most damage. "She's been having an affair with him for months. I have proof that they've been sneaking off to hotels, lying about their shifts, and engaging in a relationship that directly violates your workplace policies." The woman on the phone cleared her throat. "Sir, we take these kinds of allegations very seriously, but we would need evidence before proceeding with any internal investigation." "I have plenty," I assured her. "Security footage of them checking into a hotel, call logs, messages, everything you need to confirm this isn't just an accusation." There was a brief silence, then the sound of clicking. "If you have that kind of documentation, you can email it directly to our department for review. I'll provide you with the contact information." She gave me the details, and as soon as I hung up, I sent everything over. Within 5 minutes, I had a confirmation email saying the case had been received. That was step one. Step 2 was making sure everyone else knew what kind of person Emily really was. I spent the next hour drafting an email, attaching every piece of evidence I had, and then I sent it out to her closest friends, to our mutual acquaintances, and most importantly, to her family. I wasn't interested in explaining myself or sugarcoating anything. I wanted them to see the truth exactly as it was. Subject: the truth about Emily. I kept it short. I wanted to make sure you all knew what kind of person Emily really is. Attached is everything you need to see how she has been lying, sneaking around, and betraying the vows she made to me. If she hasn't already told you, she's been having an affair with Dr. Nathan Pierce. They've been meeting up in hotels, lying about their schedules, and making a joke out of our marriage. If you still want to stand by her after seeing this, that's your choice. But I'm done being the fool she took me for. I hit send. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up with responses. Some from mutual friends who had no idea. Some from people who had suspected something but never said anything. And then, the one I had been waiting for, Emily herself. The first text came in. What did you do? Then another. Are you seriously trying to ruin my life? Then the call. I let it ring a few times before I answered. Something wrong? I asked, my voice calm, controlled. You sent an email to my family? She snapped, her voice shaking. You sent my work a complaint? What is wrong with you? I leaned against the counter, staring out the window. What's wrong with me? I repeated. You cheated on me, Emily. You lied to my face, over and over again. Did you really think you could just walk away without any consequences? She let out a frustrated breath. Adam, this is going to destroy my career. I didn't say anything. Do you even understand what you've done? She continued, her voice rising. I could lose my job. Nathan could lose his job. I smiled to myself. Should have thought about that before you decided to go with him in a hotel room. She was breathing heavily now, panicked, desperate. Please, she said, her voice dropping slightly, shifting into something softer, something she probably thought would work on me. You don't have to do this. We can talk. I know you're angry. I know I messed up, but ruining my career? My family. You ruined it yourself, I said simply. Adam, please, she whispered. Just stop this before it goes too far. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. It's already done, Emily. I hung up. The texts kept coming, but I ignored them. I had spent too much time believing her lies, letting her control the narrative, making excuses for her choices. Not anymore. I didn't regret what I had done. Not for a second. Because now, she was finally feeling even a fraction of what she had put me through.